I love all aspects of creativity, and what excites me too much is exploring the creative process, unfolding it, understanding it, my own and others. Hi, my name's Noula Diamantopoulos. I'm an artist, a psychotherapist, and a creativity expert. And I spoke with Mo Fox, who's also a creativity expert and an artist, about the creative process. And we decided when we were speaking to record our conversation. And here it is for you, somewhat unedited, but we talk about what happens when we are, as creatives, how we may think a little bit differently to mainstream thinking, how we process the ugly baby phase of our work, and how we do our corporate programs and also our art-based programs for innovative thinking and change management, cultural change, or whether we're just engaged with art making. I hope you enjoy, and we're looking forward to bringing more of these to you. And we're going to talk about our creative process, or just even the concept of a creative process in general, alongside our own kind of experiences. You're an artist. Maybe we should do just a little introduction about who we are, because we have a curious overlap, you know. And that is that we both work with personal growth and professional development aspects and art. Both artists, both innovative thinkers, both creative experts or creativity experts, and we bring that to the planet fundamentally. In addition, we have our own special talents, whatever they may be, and of course billions of years of experience from being ex-corporates, psychotherapist, and you know what? I know, I'm trying to think, what else do I know about Mo Fox? Yeah.
This is the point I could rescue you, but
Thank
I'm
you.
not going to choose to. You can keep digging.
I just think that you have, one of the talents for me that you have, one of your...
and fleas.
Please, that's right. One of the wonderful things that you have is that every time we have conversations, every time we talk about something, anything quite frankly, is that you have a beautiful reflective process, right? So that which is not only engaging intellectually, but is actually quite insightful. So I get to expand my idea of what it is that I'm attempting to do or wanting to bring to others. And I don't think that there's, it's a process that I would love to share with other people, how to tap, for example, to engage in a conversation that is more of a reflective process in itself, focusing, Leonardo, relax, focusing on the process, even in conversation, and watching it unfold, which is what this experiment is about.
So when you say the reflective process in the conversation, what do you mean by that?
So when I know that each time that I might say to you, this is something that I'm embarking on, and I'm looking to do this, that, and the other.
Yep.
When you come back in conversation to me, there is no correction, fixing up, do it this way, do it that way. There is this compelling quality that you bring that says, so what I get from what you've said, for example, might start off something like that. What I get from what you said, and you repeat it in a reflective manner. So I get to hear what I have said to you with your own lens, because your lens is different to mine, right? And I'm going, yeah, what you said.
I don't think I knew that I do that.
Yeah, you do.
Cool.
You
awesome.
do. It's very much value adds, and so I see that very process orientated, even in our conversations.
Yeah, it's cool. But we do have really creative conversations. I think we build. Every conversation that we have is an additive conversation.
Yeah.
You chuck an idea out there, and we have such overlapping spaces, but such different entry points, such different lenses that there's always and yes, and it's sort of and there's but everything, as you say, it's not a correction, it's an addition, it's a layering, and so you end up with the Sara Lee conversation.
Layer upon layer.
Layer upon layer.
which is dynamic. We don't know where it's going to go, which means that what we're doing in this process is following each other,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, a beautiful quality to be able to do. We're tracking. We just, and the questions that are being brought to bear are more ones of curiosity about seeking to understand, and through the process of seeking to understand, even making it clearer, providing more clarity for both of us. I know certainly for me that it brings me more clarity in what it is that I'm trying to create.
And it's in itself, it's actually quite a it is, as you say, it's a creative process in itself, and it's a discovery process, and it's a collaboration.
Yeah.
And it's a finding, because
yeah.
Which is really weird. So, because the question that I wanted us to chat about was is around creative process, and because this is something that's fascinated me for ages, and it's just occurred to me the way you've just described that is a perfect reflection of all the stuff I was thinking of in a totally different space, which is really cool. Really cool. So I've spent a long. The lot of work that I do with the overlap with the art and the business piece started with me noticing how comfortable I was in the studio to just be in that ambiguity of, I wonder where this is going to go. Yeah. And this is my starting point. I think I'm heading here, but I'm not quite sure where that's going to end up looking like.
It's a great word that you just brought up, ambiguity.
Well, and that's so essential to me with the whole thing. I was so comfortable with the ambiguity, that comfort, not knowing that I don't know, that not knowing thing. And wondering, as a recovering control freak, which I think, like possibly Catholicism, you can leave it, but it never quite leaves you. And I wanted to know how to get that kind of flow, that true, that deliciousness of being in the flow, or in that zone of heading off and discovering and creating as you go. And it is collaborative, even if you're on your own in a studio.
With self.
Absolutely. Well, with self, with whatever you're doing, with there's this conversation that's always happening. Yeah. And how could I take that and have that same level of comfort in other areas of my life, either my personal life or in my professional life, and so on. And so that led me off into that business journey. And
so how did you enter that? How did you, obviously there was an idea bubbling, right? Yes. And how did you bring the idea out and show it to somebody?
Okay. And this conversation is already not heading. How did I do that? Yeah. I had 2 triggers, because the triggers, you never know what's going to trigger whatever. 3, really. I was divorced, needed an income, so I was going to go back, didn't want to get a job. Yeah. And I wanted to do something in creativity, but I was allergic to the word creativity, so I wouldn't use it anywhere.
Interesting.
Pathologically would not bring it into any business conversation at all. So just a little hang up there. Opportunity for personal growth and integration. And 2 things happened. One was a couple of friends of mine started badgering me to teach them how to draw.
Right.
Because that drawing thing is so not what creativity is, and it's so what most people have anchored as, I'm not creative because I can't draw.
Well said.
And you and I have talked about it lots. There's no such thing as not creative. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how, all of that sort of, and it's still huge. I was teaching people how to draw stick figures the other day, and half a day on drawing stick figures as an expression, mode of expression and connection in business. And even that got this huge, oh my God, I don't feel like such a complete mutant anymore. It's such deep, deep psychological scars that we get. Anyway, back to the story. Somebody said to me, teach me how to draw. And I was kind of going, I suppose I could do that. But then I was also having a drawing class, and I remember that and I'd just done a whole pile about NLP and a whole pile of personal development.
Was that here in Australia?
Yeah, it was here. All of that stuff was here. And the drawing teacher Michael Heron, by the way, if you want a great drawing teacher, he's awesome. He was doing a demo, and he said, you know, basic throwaway comment. Basically, all we're doing as artists is, and he's drawing away, is we're just trying to scribble in a way that makes sense.
Right. How
and
beautiful.
I thought,
what a wake up that one is.
It was gorgeous, and I thought, well, that's all you're doing anywhere else in life as well. That's all leadership is. That's all. And
even with words.
Absolutely. You're just trying to scribble in a way that makes sense and that kind of connects and communicates.
Yeah.
And at that point I started looking at how could you pull apart the principles as well as the process, but the principles of learning how to draw and apply that in any other area to kind of learn how to think or be at a higher level. So it was just cross-contextualizing. And then I, you know, gazed deeply at my navel for several years, and came up with a whole pile of stuff that some of it worked, some of it sucked, but that's where that came. But in the middle of all of that was this, you know, I worked in advertising, and I was obsessed with, so what's the process? What's the creative process? Yeah. And how much of it's universal and how much of it's specific? Yeah. You know, how much do you and I have in common as to when something, because there isn't anything in the world that hasn't started with a creative process. You know, everything.
Agreed.
And yet it got relegated to this cute little thing that you do as team building, or if you need to come up with some great, you know, it's brainstorming basically.
It's the product. It's always that end result. It's always that end result. It's similar to when the KPIs that we set up for in corporations, and what we're doing in that KPI session is, did you achieve your KPI or didn't you achieve your KPI? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anything that you might say as to why it wasn't achieved is an excuse. Mm-hmm. Short of, you know, the fact that there was some kind of force majeure that was really beyond your control. But outside of that, it's like, doesn't count. Fail immediately. Yet, when you go back and have a look at what was the environment, the workplace environment, say 12 months ago, what is the work environment today? If you look at it a little bit different, if you do that backward reflection and you can see who you were back then, who you are now, what it is that was achieved and how you skilled up for that achievement, right? Whether the outcomes, read KPIs here, were achieved or not, but what is a byproduct of what really, of the true growth that actually happened, you know? But we don't reward that.
And it's not seen as that because the focus is on the thing, the product, as opposed to the process. And, you know, I mean, go
process again.
You taught art for so long. I remember being in a class, and you could tell when the newbies had been doing the art classes for long enough, and it didn't matter the discipline, whether it was drawing or printmaking or sculpture, it didn't matter. Yeah. They would say with great profundity, because they were the first person to ever realize this, it's not about the product, it's about the process.
That's
it's
right.
all about the process.
It's all about the process.
But you could tell that it's such a mindset shift. It sounds so easy, and you get it cognitively. It's such a huge mindset shift.
You know, sometimes I think when we really get it, that's the buzz, right? While we are getting it, I think sometimes it's also used as a bit of an excuse.
Yes.
It's like, because, you know, we're not really producing really great things, but it's the process. It's the process.
Trust the process. Trust the process. Trust the process.
Yeah. Who's that? McCliff, isn't it? Didn't he write a book?
Everywhere.
Yeah, I think I know. He wrote a book on it. Anyway. So, but when you truly get it, and that really means for me that you also recognise that in your life, that life indeed is a process. That if you were to pursue it in that way, rather than the attainment of things and the trophies, if you like, whether the trophy is a career or it's how many shoes you have in your wardrobe, that's for the girls, and for the boys, which kind of boots, you know, all that kind of stuff. When you let all of that go, and see that where your joy comes from, how you have engaged with the process, which means for me, engaged with the process means you're engaging with those that are around you, the broader community, the universe, and all of a sudden your imagination is just, you know, it starts to blossom and recognizes that everything, there's a message in everything, there's meaning in everything, you know. And it's for us, it's that kind of thing that, you know, that drawing teacher said, that it's, you know, scribble trying to make sense of itself. And we're being given continuously all these little breadcrumbs for us to make sense of. In breadcrumbs, read experiences, read life experiences, as opposed to being reacting to them. It's more of like, okay, what might this mean for me and my life's process? What am I journeying for here? What lesson am I to gain here? And why do I need a lesson? Because we are going to grow ourselves. And I'd like to put a pause in that, because you are already yourself, but you're going to grow it.
And discover it, I think. You know, that's the... Yeah, that's the...
Because we're already in there. Whoever we are is in there, right? But it gets kind of covered up with, you know, look what I painted, look what I produced, look what I made, look what I bought, look, you know, that kind of thing, my collections, you know, as opposed to look at my qualities. You know, you don't have to look at qualities, you can just sense those once you grow those. And that is a deeper understanding of who we are and what we bring on this planet. So the creative process is everywhere.
Yeah, well, look, at nature is a creative process, so it has to be. And I think as part of that piece, that growing into yourself, it's kind of like watching a kid. You know, they're always themselves. They've got these enormous feet, or you know, you see a two or 3-year-old on the teeth. You know, the teeth. Then when the next teeth come down, they're like twice the size of the face. And teenagers, particularly boys, whose faces just mutate. Like within minutes, you can start a conversation and you're looking at a totally different child by the end of it. Or that personality that's so big when they're 3, and that, you know, we spend our lifetime growing into ourselves.
That's it. How do you find that taking the creative processes conceptually to corporates? Do you find that? Can you define that there's been a success with that, with respect to, I don't know, we probably have to narrow it down a bit, whether it's been team building or whether it's some other topic that you've taken to a corporate? Because they do, of course, want an outcome.
Well, the challenge that I find with that is, it's the outcome-driven thing, is that, and this is kind of why I get the universal specific thing, because the nature of the creative process is that there are some broad principles, but it's not a method. So the biggest barrier to it is that in many corporate spaces they'll use the language, but they won't have the mindset. So the approach is, we'll use a creative process, but it's still a follow the bouncing ball step by step, which means that all they're doing is substituting one mechanistic formula for another one to get to the same outcome, and it's still a sense of reverse engineering from that space. And that works in some contexts, and sometimes it's about providing handrails to get people comfortable enough to be doing stuff that's not really left brain and provable, and so, you know, you've got to get them past the wiggy stage, etc. But where I have the most success with it was actually the startup. I work a lot with wicked problems, stuff that has no solution.
I love that.
It's gorgeous. It's such a delicious space. And if you're working in a space that's full of other people, everybody with their own agenda, where there's chaos, because it just keeps shifting. You know, that you said at the beginning when you were talking about the KPIs, the bits that were, you know, the force of nature that's out of your control, that gets in the way of that 20-step plan to go from here to here. It assumes that you get to step 1, and frankly all bets are off on the other 19, because the world is different.
The world is different.
So at that point, I do use a model, but it's a floating model. So and at that point, creative principles coming in there, really useful, incredibly useful. And that gives people a handle that they haven't had before on how do you approach mess, basically, because it's not a Newtonian universe. It's not clear cut. I mean, you know, we talk about it all the time, but there's a lot of discussion about that with this compulsion and underlying assumption that somehow success equals restoring order or extracting order from the chaos, as opposed to figuring out a way of moving with the chaos or navigating the chaos to get to where you want to go. And it's that navigation, it's like sailing. You're never going in a straight line. You're kind of, and sometimes you're back here and you're stuck in a whirlpool, and that's when that creative process thing, I think, has the most traction. A lot of people with design thinking are using it, but they're missing a lot of the mindset pieces. Right. And that's the biggest difference. People, when you've got designers or creatives coming into business, they take with them a mindset, an experience from the studio, from their design world, from their creative process, that they take for granted. And it's the opposite of the mindset. And opposite, very opposite, as in mutually exclusive, negating each other mindset often.
So what's coming to my imagination right now is the fact that though the creative process is this kind of wobbly, non-linear, very difficult to almost grasp at times, but yet not if you actually can articulate it because you know it quite well, which is what you can do and it's what I can do, which means that what seems to be chaos or a mess is just something waiting to be discovered. Right? It's just that, and I think in science they do that. Things are, the mathematics of chaos are discoverable only if they've got a really huge, massive lens, so that they can see that number, for example, that sacred number in geometry in our universe has finally repeated itself. Oh my God, there's a pattern, and I can talk about it now. So articulation, the ability to articulate creative process, is essential for, even though it's not linear, it's essential for all of us, I believe. Even for us, I think, because even when we're in the flow, the fact that, because we do intuit, right? And we sometimes are even in, not knowing about what has happened. But if we don't, after the event, stop and reflect, so it's what I call is, a contemplative inquiry, we're not going to ground it. We're just going to be relying on, oh yeah, I just intuit this stuff and this magic happens, and isn't that lovely? Magic. And magic does happen, but I think it's even more magical when you can say, I don't know exactly, but let me explain to you or express to you what I sensed in that process, so that maybe you can also experience that too. And then in part of that expression, there was a letting go. There was a conscious letting go. There was a conscious surrender. I wasn't fighting anymore.
And a willingness for it not to be what you thought it was going to be. It's a I find that if I'm making something, there's a part, and it's different in each piece, whether it's a collage or a painting or whatever, where it's enough of itself to start directing me, and not me directing it,
There's a call and response.
But it's almost like, the equivalent of the right to life thing. When is a fetus, a baby, etc. But it's similar, I find, with art, because you start, and whether or not you start with an idea, top of the pyramid, or you start with the materials and then see what's going to happen. You start with a something. And you might not have an idea. You might be just dicking around, waiting for something to emerge. The materials that you're mucking around with. It's a Rauschenberg thing. I just start with the materials and see where it takes me. There's a point at which something coalesces enough for it to become a thing outside of, it's outside of me. And so that's when it really, it's not me having a conversation with the materials, it's me having the conversation with an entity thing that's trying to become. And then you're helping birth.
That's it. And that's the birthing process. I understand thoroughly. I think you've hit onto something here, and that is that many of our beginnings are designed for us to begin.
That's it. But you're just looking for a way in.
That's it. It's just an entry point. And it can be the squiggle, for example. It can be the material.
It can be the colour blue, it can be a word, it can be music, it doesn't really matter.
A vague sense of something that's
right?
hooking you in.
Right, and then that's it. Once you've begun, because that's, you know, what we want, what we need in the creative process is to move.
Yes, yes. It's momentum.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So when students come, and if I compare that example to students, you know, newbies and whatever, they need to know everything.
Yep.
What colours, what size brushes, you know, which paper.
But it's fear. I mean, the terror.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly
right.
And
I want to know where I'm going to end up, and I'm not going to look like an idiot.
That's right. And of course, if they don't get what they thought that they were aiming for,
it's a fail.
Oh boy. And what of course they lose out is on the gift.
Yes.
You know, for many years, in the right at the beginning when I was teaching art, which was always an empowerment-based course, which meant that you learned about materials, you know, there's a lot of technical stuff. You learned about acrylics, watercolors, oils, pastels, foundations of sighting, you know, Betty Edwards, drawing on the right side. And then there was the empowerment side was talking about the inner critic and how to collapse, you know, limiting beliefs. My view back then, all right, 2 decades ago, my view back then was if I gave you this course, this was done in 4 weeks, so it was once a month, because that's all you're going to need, right?
You're fixed.
You're fixed. And now you can go and do all these other amazing courses out there, which I wasn't, because I don't want to be an instructor in art, right? I
just want to open the door.
I just want to open the door. That's exactly right. That was my intention, okay? And what happened was, not that.
Really?
No, it didn't. So they were coming back, the students were coming back, and they would say to me, well, you know, can you teach me, I don't know, do you do life drawing? No, not with me. You go to the other places. Go to the other places and learn that stuff. And they go, but we don't feel confident. I go, what do you mean you don't feel confident? Didn't I just collapse the inner critic, you know? And didn't I show you that you can? Yeah, didn't I show you that you can draw?
Did I solve it?
Draw if you just want to. At the end of the day, you now got to practice it, you know. I did that for a number of years, and it took a long time.
Until the bruise. Need a tumor.
And then I turned it right around, and what I did, and that's why, you know, I do what's called, you know, spontaneous creativity, where I get people, there's no brushes involved, right? Yes, that's exactly right. So we do what looks like nonsense, and then we make sense of the no sense, right? And then from that, the other skills that I used to teach first up, thinking that was going to, you know, release them of all their, you know, blah, they come in to support their path, not the other way around. Because I found that it created more new rules and regulations about drawing and stuff. And it was not like that. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually working now with people to find their voice straight away.
Yeah, that's nice.
Straight away. And then the rest of the stuff, you know, the traditional stuff, all of that kind of stuff comes in to support their voice.
Much nicer.
Much nicer.
Much nicer.
Much nicer. But it does look very silly to begin with.
Well, that's cool. And as an embarrassment, after I had been doing this, and you know, I had theorized and I'd broken everything down to principles, and you know, I know. So I do believe in going back to beginner space on a regular basis.
It's true. We have to have a beginner's mind, don't we?
So
don't we have to have a beginner's mind?
Oh God, yeah. Totally. Yeah. Much as it discomforts me to do it, I do it on purpose on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I went and did a weekend of improv acting.
Oh, cool.
So about process.
Oh.
Improv acting, and with Lynn Pierce, who brought a lot of improv and theatre sports to Australia. Fantastic.
Right.
Awesome, right? So we go to improv. Now, by this stage, I am an expert,
of course,
in the creative process.
Yes, of course.
I am doing metacognition the entire time because I'm not at all a wanker. And I am looking down at my processes. I have my processes I do.
Yeah.
Because all of this will feed my work. So we're sitting down in a circle on the first day, and she's going around saying to everybody, you know, why are you here or whatever. And I said, because I haven't done this before, and I'm not comfortable in this space, and something I can't even remember. She looked at me, and she may have even said this before I opened my mouth. She said, your biggest issue is that you're too much, you're trying to control the outcome.
Right.
You've got to let go of the outcome. I'm thinking, moi?
Moi? You're talking to moi?
I understand that. I mean, this is a creative process, and it's all about flow, and it's all about... She was so spot on. I was so uptight the entire weekend. My brain was going, you've got to let go, just be in the moment, just respond. No, I needed to try to control the conversation to get this other person, brainwash this other person. If I was just willful enough, they would sense that that was where they were supposed to go, because if they went there, then I could go there. Right. It was...
So what did you get out of it, do you reckon?
Apart from the mortification of truly sucking at something. And being really, really massively uncomfortable. I got, that piece, you might, I don't know what you find, but when I start with any new medium, I can be drawing really well with charcoal, for example. If somebody gives me, what are they called, fusillade? There's really fat pieces.
Oh, yeah.
I've been drawing with charcoal for years. Somebody gave me one of those. It was like I'd never drawn before. And it's the number of times that each time around the goldfish bowl is a first. And you learn faster with the awareness and expertise, but it doesn't make you a walk-in expert. So that feeling, what I really got out of it was how incredibly vulnerable I felt in that space, being so sucky at it, and it's all the inner critic stuff. But as adults, and mostly I work with adults, either teaching or working alongside, so much of our identity is invested in our expertise, in our competence.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. That's so threatened. So to even go in and then start using creative process as a problem-solving tool still exposes them to being massively vulnerable in a public space.
And I guess the fact that you allow yourself to experience that and to remember what that is like, you can bring that compassion into the workplace to know that other people, like if they're sitting in class with you, for example, in a corporate environment or wherever, that you can sense that of others and you can keep them safe.
Sometimes.
Yes.
I mean, I can try, but sometimes they also... That's that tightrope, isn't it?
It is.
You want safe enough.
You want to push them, but at the same time you want to make them feel that they are...
It's got to be challenging, or there's no limit.
No, it definitely has to be challenging. And I think that you can challenge people in a safe way.
That's the difference. It's a dance.
Yeah.
I think it's a... there was a conversation I was having with Rob the other day.
Yeah.
I'd been reading a Pixar book. I can't remember it anyway. There was a comment in it about... how at the beginning, Ed Catmull talks about the fact that all of their movies are ugly babies to start out with.
Right.
And that's another thing I often forget. Particularly if I haven't been in the studio for a long time, it's the first thing that leaves is it's an ugly baby for 80% of its lifetime. And it's really ugly. It's clunky, it doesn't work, it's frustrating. And he was pointing out, I think he was quoting one of the directors saying, just how painful the process could be. And Rob pointed it out to me, and I said, I hate my paintings for most of them. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I freaking loathe them. I go down there, and yes, I'm dancing, and yes, I'm having fun, but there's this inner battle of trying to pull something out of nothing, out of a void, when even what's in your head isn't that clear. Even if you're just drawing from, there's this thing, and it's hard, and it's not easy, it's painful, and there's stuff-ups, and you've got to wreck things and break them and bring them back and give them space when they get, all of that stuff. It's not creative. It's not an easy thing. And he said, "What are you doing? I've been working with you for 3 years. You've never told me that. I expected it had to all be fun." And I thought, I just took that for granted. You never said. You never gave me permission to be unhappy making something. I thought I was failing.
Ugly baby. So it's really interesting because I had the same process, different language. So mine's a bit more crass. Mine is when I get my first students, a lot of students in, or even when we lose, starting a new process, moving from one to another. it is like, I want you to produce as much crap as you possibly can now.
You've got 10 minutes.
You've got to where the most crap wins. That's exactly right. And you're not allowed to throw it away.
Yep.
So we don't, because I know from when I first started to draw, and you know, I was in the corporate world and then left that to become an artist, and so people think that when you do that, it's because you discovered some kind of amazing talent. And there was no amazing talent.
No, it's just because you're out of your tiny mind.
That's right. It's like, I mean, that would have been really helpful back then, but it wasn't. And what I had was just this desire. I just knew that the arts world was my next place, and I didn't know why, to be quite honest. And I didn't know how it was going to look like, you know, painter, drawer, writer, photographer. I didn't really know, but I just knew it was the art. Anyway, in my early days, when I was starting to explore, after having done degrees, you know, for my other careers, where do I go to study art, and discovered very quickly that there's a lot of art history type of courses at university, but practical art not very many. And then realised that there was a lot of angst about, you know, calling yourself an artist, and people had this big thing about what that meant and who qualifies for it and who doesn't.
Oh, another, like
sidebar.
Sidebar.
Yeah, sidebar, that one. And so, over there. And so I very quickly realised that I was going to become my own teacher, and as I did, I'd be doing these drawings which are truly, truly pathetic. My eye was not in. Forget eye-hand coordination. I just really, truly couldn't see. You know what? You know, something that was circular would be a proper circle. Of course, it was not a proper circle anyway. And what I was doing in the early days, I was drawing, screwing it up, throwing it away. And that's why now, that's why I teach what I've experienced myself. The day that I changed, this is before I got my studio, and I was 6 months out of my career before I moved into a studio. One of the changing times for me that changed me was I drew blue tack hallways. So as soon as you walked in the front door, there were all these really dicky drawings.
Ooh!
Really dicky drawings.
You desensitized yourself to your own.
I desensitized myself. It also meant that anybody walking in was, there they were.
In public
to critique them. They're going, I like this one. So even if they picked one that they liked, then I would be, well, what about the others? Or they would want to give me some great feedback, or I might have spent, I don't know, say 6 hours on one drawing, and they would say to me, oh, this one I really like. And I go, oh, I did that one really quickly. Because I didn't think that I honoured it enough to be able to, I didn't think it was like because in a corporate environment, you've got to do things quick, right? Yeah. So I associated speed with talent as well. Right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, nah, see that work there, that's about 6 months' work just there.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was one of my big breaking points. And because the gift of that was, there was a moment, I don't know when it was, it might have been 3 weeks later or something like that, where I noticed that my hand had improved.
Nice.
Yeah. So when I saw that, I go, well, I would never see that if I was screwing it up and throwing it away. So, sidebar, artist now. And this hang-up, my response to that word is this. Artist is a profession, is a career, and you choose it, and that's how you make your livelihood from it. And it's very different to being artistic, right, or to being creative. Everybody's creative. We already agree upon that. But it's, to me, I liken it to someone being a great cook at home.
Yeah.
And somebody running a restaurant as a great cook, chef, whatever you want to call it. The difference for me is this.
Yeah.
The great cook at home who puts on a dinner party once a week, twice a week, doesn't really matter, has got all these billions of hours and resources to spend to produce something that is yummy, and you're going to just die for it, right? Put that person, right, in a professional capacity chef and run everything else as artists we need to do. And maintain our own self and our own exposure to our own feelings that might, pull us down and say that we're not good enough, and who you're trying to kid, that you think you've got any kind of talent. Forget talent, I don't even like using the word for that, but that you have anything to even offer another person. Who are you and all of that. And we have to do that by ourselves, right? Whereas if we were to sit there, if we had the luxury of producing some one work, let's say, somebody gives you, say, $100,000 and you've got, 3 months, $100,000. Do with it what you like. Just produce something for me. Yes, that's exactly right. That's what I mean.
Bring back patronage.
That's right. Bring back patronage.
The festers, where are you?
That's right. Where are you? Yeah, but it's like that. It's like that. It's like, and I'm not taking away the fact that they can't call themselves, like the home cook can't call themselves a chef. I'm not saying that. But the emotion that goes with it being a full-time profession, being then exposing yourself to the public in exhibitions, right? The home cook doesn't do that. And you're not going to get everybody who's going to love what it is that you do, And you're always exposing yourself when you're at home producing beautiful works that you might be producing, which has got the time to do it, which you've got the resources to do it, but you don't have to rely on a livelihood for it, so you can just do one a month.
Yeah, yes, it's a really nice distinction.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit with it.
Yes.
Because I struggled with the whole thing.
Yeah.
A lot. I think partially because the word artist, it's like accountant. It's
You're knocking my past profession. I'm going through the A's at the moment. Well, I jumped to P with psychotherapist, so I was going to say.
It's I think I struggle with it because it's a label, and the label becomes an identity piece.
That's the thing.
And
that's the thing. There's that with all the labels, though. Anything you're going to label is going to have that problem.
Sure. So I had two bits with that. The bits that really screwed me up around it, and it's okay. So one of the aspects is this hobby versus professional piece.
Yep.
And given that so many artists can't make a living out of their art.
Yes.
Does that mean if they make a living waiting tables, but painting, that they're not an artist? So there's a big thing.
No, I think that there's a huge intention thing as well. One thing that can be supporting your pathway as an artist, because, and there are different kinds of artists, obviously, as well. But whether you're an exhibiting artist, for example, right? Whether you're a public arts artist, whether you're an artist that makes commentary on what's happening in the social condition, whether there is an intention with that, or even if you're a decorative artist, to produce beautiful things, for people's homes, or they're all valid. They're all, so I think it is really the intention behind it. But I think that profession of the artist, where even if you are doing another job, whether that job is teaching or waiting tables, that like actors and actresses do, they would never not consider themselves an actor or an actress.
That's what I mean. And so I had this, and I'll probably do that one as another sidebar for later. But I've been pulling myself apart with am I an artist? Am I not an artist? Because I make my money
from many sources. Many creative sources.
In fact, I've only recently discovered that I think I had a real block on making any money from my art directly. However, my whole livelihood depends on my art, because so I make money from it, but I don't necessarily sell a lot of it. So it's
But that makes total sense to me. I can't, even as an art educator, which read personal growth there. Just happen to be using art. But anyway, even as an art educator, even as an art educator, I don't think that I would be valid one without my own processes coming to bear. Right? So therefore, even though I'm producing art, whether I exhibit or don't exhibit, that is a big part of my process to understand what it is to be an artist, how to think like an artist, how to sit at a table, pick up that charcoal and go, shit, I don't know. And why am I here anyway? What brought me right now? And then, we're talking right at the beginning of this conversation to talk about our creative processes. And right now what comes to my imagination are the spirit sticks that I'm making, right?
Yes, cool. Let's talk about those.
Yes.
Where did they actually, what were you going to say?
Yes.
As a question. Sorry. It was really rude. I really wanted to get
talk. No, just talk.
Just talk.
So the spirit sticks, which came about last November in the November exhibition, were a teaser part of an encaustic exhibition, which was part of a trilogy, the second part of a trilogy called Inhale. And it's a teaser because I brought in the spirit sticks, which will be part of the final part of the trilogy called Exhale. And they came about because my mum passed away last year. And being in that space of not knowing who I am on this planet anymore exposed me to more deeply to the mysticism of this universe, you know. And there was one moment going for a walk, and I picked up the stick. Now, when I picked up the stick, there was a memory. The stick, of course, is a branch, and what memory it was. And I got my belly's now going off, right? The memory was when I was a very, very little girl back at Lidcombe, and I didn't speak English going to school. And I remember one day having stolen some paper, and I remember the tin. It was a tin of paint. And I came back home, and it was this kind of orangey kind of, it wasn't orange, but it was an earthy colour, orangey kind of colour. And I painted a tree. It was the first thing I ever did in my life that I can remember, right? And when I picked up the branch, I remembered that. But there was something that happened, and probably it was the result of the memory, that I was vibrating. So whether the branch was vibrating with me, or whether it was all of that. And I was doing encaustic, so it was an encaustic exhibition. So I began to explore the branch, and I started working with the found object, as we do as artists, you know, and it just jump starts our imagination. And then I didn't know really what I was doing, but I began to encaustic the branches, and magic was happening. And then I began to add my mum's jewellery to it. And
it really vibrated.
Oh, it did. Oh my God, that changed everything. That was like, it wasn't anything to do with creating anything of beauty. It was telling me a story. Because each of those, and I didn't even really know what the story was until I was partway through it, and it was basically like you said, when you're playing with material and then something comes back to you, and that's what it was doing. It was telling me the story. And with some of them, I wrote quotes that are very significant to me, and wrapped some part of the tree in those quotes with a ribbon. And then what happened is, as this started to grow, these spirit sticks began to grow. I went to Rookwood Cemetery, where my mum is. And there are a lot of trees there, and I turned around after visiting her, and there were these amazing, amazing branches on the ground. Thanks, Mum! In the boot of the car. And so that's how the spirit sticks were birthed. And it was a connection for me to make sense of a process, if you like, to make sense of a new relationship that I was building with my mum and her spirit, because she's still around, but not in, of course, human form.
That's such a cool story.
Thank you.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo.
Yeah.
Is that typical of, would that be a typical, because that's sort of, it almost came to you out of the ether at that point.
Yeah.
One thing sparked to another and then led to another. So there wasn't a lot of pre-planning. It was a lot of circumstance. You happened to be doing encaustics.
That's
you
right.
happened to be walking down the street. It happened to be at a point when your mom had died.
That's right.
So it was a lot of almost discovering the process, or discovering the thing as you went. Did you feel led, or just...
Well, as I hear you saying that, it's reminding me of that, what we were talking about before, which is, is your imagination and is your heart open enough to pick up the breadcrumbs that are being given to you? And I think that that's a great example of breadcrumbs that are saying, would you like to join the dots here? I'm giving you something. And you might say, is there something, the actual art product itself? No, there's a healing that happened through that. There was a strong connection with my mum throughout that, and I actually feel that my relationship with her now is always. It's always. Is that typical of my other processes? Yes, I think it is. Like when I was actually making the encaustic artworks, which were paintings, they were in grids of. So I did a big image, and I used of 9 pieces that created one image in 9 pieces of the universe, because that's where I was at with the idea of inhale, receiving the divine gift of breath coming from the universe. And I found that paradoxical because my mum passed away on my inhale exhibition, not on exhale. So in my imagination, I was playing with the idea of death, not death.
Yeah.
So there's that concept, because it was, she passed, but something was birthed.
Yeah.
And as I was making, and the images were of the universe, so I used pictures that were taken by Hubble, that's how I created the works and blah, blah, blah. And then I broke them up. So I didn't know that I was going to do that. So that's the same thing again. It was like that. All I knew was that's how I was going to start.
Yeah.
That's all I ever know.
Yeah.
How I'm going to start.
Yeah.
And then I broke them up. And when I broke them up, it was random. It wasn't like, well, this was the first one, and this was the second one, this was the third one. It wasn't like that. It was just like I just broke them up. And then the magic happened, right? When I went to install them at the gallery, I spaced them according to the Fibonacci sequence. I know. I blew myself away. And I don't feel that's me. I just feel that that is a combination of so many things that I allow myself to be open to. And when you see them, these little square images, take all of one image, and then I've got this idea of, the hologram, which is, any one piece of any big piece encompasses the whole piece, right?
Fractal.
The fractal, thank you. So then it became part of that. Then it became, I could not have spaced it so beautifully myself, and I look at the spacing, Fibonacci sequence, magic, it just works. Then there was this idea of the expanding universe. And then I'm just sitting there gazing at it, and I'm going, I am thanking the work that's gifting me. Yeah, pretty cool. And so the spirit sticks were lying flat in one area. It was a sneak peek for the final part of the trilogy, and the suggestion there was that they're dormant, they're not quite activated yet.
Yeah.
Whereas in the final exhibition, they'll be activated.
It's interesting when you went through that. It's such a gorgeous contrast to the way, going back to the process piece. What you described was you start with a thing and you continually opened it up. So even when you'd done the painting, you broke it and opened it up.
That's
and then when you put it on the wall, it opened up.
Again.
So it was this continual process of opening yourself to more meaning.
Yes.
And if you think of running a project in an office environment, it's a thing of closing it down. The whole point of a project is often to close it down as fast as possible. Yeah. And it's fascinating that by opening it up, you got to a finished product as opposed to a diaspora. It wasn't like it just scattered.
No.
It became.
That's right.
And by opening it up, you were creating the opportunity for collaboration with however you want to phrase it. But you created the space for an accident. It's like it gets to a point of tightness. How do you break it to create space for something more to come in, for something more until it feels itself, until it feels whole.
And it's come to its pause.
Yes, and it's just become.
Yeah, it's just become, and I was very fortunate because the curator, usually the curator wants to know how it's going to, blah blah blah. And I
give it to me on a grid, honey.
Yeah, that's right. And I said, look, I don't know. And they said, well, are you, because they thought that I was going to give it to them, the 9 pieces in one whole, and do you want some gaps between the 9 pieces, or do you want them close together? And I said, just let me come into the space and I'll know pretty quickly, I didn't know that I was going to know pretty quickly. I was just giving them kind of comfort that, don't worry, I will know. I don't know if I will know, but I know what I do know, and that is I don't know right now. So, but telling somebody...
And you're not going to force it.
I'm not going to force it.
I'm not going to make an arbitrary, because at the moment you would have had to make that decision with your head, and it's like without collaborating with the space is your material.
Yep.
So, you added encaustic, you kept, there was an additive process. Yep. The next edition was the space, and the edition after that was the people watching.
That's exactly it. And that's the very relevant thing, and meaning that not only have I created the work and whatever, but it was installed in a way that tied the space into the work and the work into the space. So the interesting thing that the gallery concluded with me was that I am hang on a second. What did they say that I'm installationist?
Oh,
yeah, I'm an installation artist. And I go, okay, whatever. But I can see that now. I can see that I work with ideas, not just the artwork itself to say, here they are, but it is about the ideas that hold the artwork together. It's all combined in one.
It's context. You have
context. Right.
So they're not. I've always. This is probably another conversation, but I say that the art is in the engagement, not in the artifact.
Thank you.
And we tend to think of the art as it's the piece, it's the pigment on the board. It's you know, but Mona Lisa is pigment on board. That doesn't make it a work of art. What makes it a work of art is the way that people respond to it when they see it.
On. I went to the exhibition at MCA on Monday with Chuck.
Yeah, so
yes, yeah, cool, right?
Loved it. Now,
if you just look at those
works,
talk about process, exactly right. If you just go to those works and see them as a final product, you'll go, yeah, okay, love it, it's a picture, love it, yeah, so realistic, isn't that curious, isn't that this, that, and the other. That's not what makes it. What makes it is full on the process that he engaged with. And then when you go back and look at them, you go, oh my God.
Yep. And it's so fascinating because, and this is why I'm really excited about doing a series on process and starting and recording, because I'm obsessive about recording process.
Yeah.
It's like mind reading, you know, and future telling at the same time, because you get to see someone's thought processes. I spent ages in that exhibition. Went off, bought the wigs, and I'm looking through. It's like that conversation we had at the gallery a few hours ago.
Just now, with the big printer.
Tell me, how does it work? How does it work? And then it becomes, what can I do with it?
Yeah.
You know, how can I play?
You know what? Process, when you are engaged with other people's stories of process, gives you permission to go for it.
Yeah. And it immediately gives you a sense of expanding your area of possible play.
That's right.
It's like, ooh,
and not feeling that you have to do it this way or have to do it that way. You did that. You broke those rules. You did that. You broke several rules. You did that. That seems pretty impossible, but you did it anyway.
Yeah.
What am I not doing?
Yeah. Or what could I?
What could I do?
If I have this, you know, it's if you go large scale, the biggest shifts in art historically have always been with the introduction of a new medium, you know, like acrylic paint or photography or whatever.
Well, the Polaroid cameras, remember?
Absolutely. And because the new medium allowed people to play differently and it allowed people to think and see, particularly to see differently, it was like, you know, like your painting when you broke it up and then you started spacing. It's what it does. It injects something new. You injected space into your painting and it just allowed it to become something else.
You know, and you know what just comes to mind too, like one of the big photographs that he's got there, that I think our National Gallery's got that photograph. I think it's the big black one of Chuck Close. So I'm talking about that. I think Chuck made a comment about that. He said that this is, because it's photorealism what he's producing, it's so like
micro. It's
just
meticulous. Right. It's almost claustrophobic.
And so what he says, because there was a comment about him being a portraiturist, you know, through the
heads.
No, and he said, no, this is not. I don't do that. What this is? I can't remember exactly his words, but it was like, this is not a portrait of the person. This is a portrait of the photograph.
Yes. Yeah. Nice. Which was such a nice distinction.
That's an artist. That's artists think. That's how artists think. It's like, how do I bring art in here? And for him, it was, how does he continue to bring his hand into something? Like right at the end of that room there was almost those very big pixelated kind of colours that when you look at them again, you think, yeah, okay, whatever, big deal. But when you learn that he painted by hand every single one of those colours, and then every one of those colours got scanned into the computer to ensure that his hand was in it before it got reproduced.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep. Now I wanted to play with as well. He's got so many cool toys. So many toys. And it's not that it's about the toys, but it's
fun to push them.
But it allows you to break your own patterns.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm big on I think that even though I have an impulse to open stuff up, I have a very strong impulse to close things down as well. Right. You know, I'm a problem solver from way back.
Yeah.
And you know, I do word puzzles and
You
Sudoku.
and I,
you know,
you and I are the same in that. Yeah, I do word puzzles
and,
and
it's comforting because there's a solution.
Of
there's
course,
an
and
outcome,
look,
and
you
it's
got it,
finished.
you know, and you can have that glass of red wine.
Yes, absolutely. and there's a tick in the box. You got it right, or you fucked it up. And so there's this enormous comfort in that, and
prefrontal cortex.
There isn't much freedom in it. There's comfort in it, but not freedom. And so I think I'm continually, and that's really become a part of my art process, is I'm continually looking for ways to break it.
Yeah.
Continually looking for ways to disrupt it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's been incredibly important, whether I'm working at home, whether I'm working in a business environment or a studio, is getting better at sensing when I'm stuck or in a rut and why, and faster, so that I can sit in it for long enough and then break it. You know, it's literally, you know, I'm working on a painting that I don't like at the moment. Strangely enough, it's still very firmly in the ugly baby stage. Ugly baby, wretchedly ugly baby, and. I was prancing about it the other day, and I finally thought, you know what? I fucking hate you. And I covered the entire thing in white paint, and I threw stuff at it. And I sat back, and because I work in I work in ink, so it's a transparent medium. It was white when I painted it, but it dried transparent. You know, it dried with just a milky sheen.
Yes, you got a shadowing effect.
Yeah. So the image was still defiantly very much there. I'm still ugly, but I'm still alive. But I liked it much better because it lost its tightness.
Yeah.
It loosened up again, so it created some. It could breathe.
Breathing space.
Yeah, and which was fascinating. And the last course I gave a course in design thinking a while back, and the last one I gave, and it was fascinating because the entire group, I had about, can't even remember, 20 people in the room, I guess, and they were trying to, you know, solve, and everybody kept flipping back into solve.
Right.
Flipped back into solve, 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 and we got into the space, and it was anyway, we had a project we were working on, and they're all senior people, so they're all sitting back going, well, they haven't got a strategy, and we've got to fix their strategy before we can do this, and their HR is stuffed, and they've got policy, and it's all just, but it was all, how can you fix this without fixing the context? Yeah. And of course, you know, the context is what's wicked, but you still got to get an outcome on this. Yeah, so how are you going to do that? But they all got bogged down in it, and normally I would, you know, wander around rescuing everything, pulling them all out, and I'll let them sit in it. And the energy in the room went from being wow to and I said, okay, notice, where are you guys? Yeah. And everybody asked, what's your energy like? Look at your body posture. What's going on? How do you feel about it? And you're frustrating. They all went through. And I said, okay, so what are you trying to do here? Yeah. Have anybody noticed what kind of thinking are you employing? And they kind of,
that's what you put into awareness.
Yeah, and it was, and I think that so often it's tacking. It's like in sailing. You get to a point where you can't go in that direction any further. You still hit it, but then you've got to go over this way. And we don't recognize that because we have this linear thing in our head. Yeah. So when we get stuck, we don't know to stop, break it, do something else. We think we should. Yeah. We think we've got to power through it. Right. You know? Yeah. Use that will. Yeah, absolutely. And that solving it is a matter of will.
Well, and I would use the will in this way. Yes, use your will. Will you use your imagination?
And will you take a risk?
And will you take a risk?
It's the loss aversion. Because, you know, I've invested so much to get to this point. It's a dead end, but I can't afford to. Yeah. And not seeing it that it's not abandoning it. No, because it's changing tack.
It's just changing tack. It's part of its evolutionary path.
So I think that's an important part. I mean, you know, you described so beautifully being open to being led in a new direction. Yeah. I think sometimes it's also really important to being open to having those directions closed off.
That's it.
And it does become
and
a
I've
dance.
Experienced that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And on that note, Mel Fox,
Should we see if anything recorded?
Yes, because nothing might have recorded. Who knows how long the phone goes for? Yeah, that was lovely.
That was fun.
That was so enjoyable.